2 years after the humans left, Ambassador Sarah Chen returned to Zenith Prime Station. The station looked different. Cleaner somehow, more organized. The environmental systems hummed smoothly, the lights were steady, and the translation announcements were clear. It had taken 18 months of hard work, but the station was functional again. Not perfect, not like it had been when humans maintained everything invisibly, but functional. Sarah walked through corridors she had walked 1,000 times before. She passed species she recognized, though many faces were new. Some nodded respectfully. Others stopped to thank her. A few looked away, perhaps embarrassed. She did not mind. She had not come for gratitude. She had come because the work was not finished. Krelix met her at the docking bay. The small insectoid analyst had changed too. Older, perhaps. More confident. There was a leadership quality that had not been there before. "Ambassador Chen," Krelix said, gesturing with multiple limbs in a traditional Quilix greeting. "Welcome back." "Thank you, Counselor Krelix," Sarah replied, returning the gesture. "I hear you have been busy." "We all have been busy," Krelix said as they walked toward the council chambers. "Learning what we should have learned decades ago. Understanding what we took for granted." The chamber itself had been redesigned. Instead of a tiered hierarchy with the chairman elevated above everyone else, the seats were now arranged in a circle. Every species at the same level. The old Galactic Council had been dissolved 6 months ago. The new organization was called the Stellar Federation. Sarah took her seat in the circle. Beside her sat representatives from 37 different species. Some were old council members who had stayed and reformed. Others were new members, including several who had left the council years ago and were now returning. Chairman Thaxul, though he was no longer called chairman, just Senior Counselor Thaxul, opened the session. He looked older, his purple skin lighter, his movement slower, but his voice was steady. "Welcome everyone to the 47th session of the Stellar Federation. Today we have Ambassador Chen with us to discuss the continuing reconstruction program." Sarah stood. Around her, representatives from dozens of species waited to hear what she would say. "Thank you, Senior Counselor. Over the past 2 years, the Human Compact has worked with the Federation to restore essential systems. We have trained 15,000 technicians from 30 species in infrastructure maintenance. We have established educational programs in logistics, mediation, and cross-species cooperation. We have helped reorganize trade routes, rebuild communication networks, and establish new safety protocols." She paused, looking around the circle. "But today I want to talk about something more important than systems. I want to talk about people." She activated a holographic display that showed dozens of faces, humans, Viridians, Quilix, Corvians, and many others. These are the instructors who have been teaching Federation species how to maintain their own infrastructure. Half of them are human, half are not. They work together, learn from each other, and respect each other's contributions. The image shifted to show a space station under construction. "This is the new training facility we are building together. It will be the largest technical education center in known space. Students from any species can attend free of charge. When they graduate, they will understand not just how to maintain systems, but why those systems matter." Representative Vixtor, the crystalline being who had once been one of Sarah's harshest critics, stood up. "Ambassador, I must ask the question many are thinking. Why are you helping us? We dismissed you. We undervalued your work. We took you for granted. Why return to help those who hurt you?" Sarah looked at Vixtor for a long moment. "Because this was never about revenge, Representative. It was about respect. You have shown you can learn. You have shown you can change. That is all we ever asked for." She gestured to the faces on the display. "These instructors are not here because we told them to come. They volunteered. Because humans believe in fixing things. We believe in making systems work. We believe in helping others succeed. That has not changed. What has changed is that now people understand the value of that work." Dr. Zenthar, the Kulian physician, stood next. "Ambassador, I have a personal question, if I may. I worked beside human medical staff for 20 years. I never thanked them. I never acknowledged what they did. Some of them died before I understood. How do I live with that?" The chamber fell silent. This was the question many had been afraid to ask. Sarah's expression softened. "Doctor, you live with it by honoring their memory. You teach the next generation to see the work that others do. You make sure no one else is invisible the way we were. That is the only apology that matters. The one that creates change. Dr. Zenthar sat down slowly, nodding. Over the next hours, the session continued. Reports were given. Programs were discussed. Decisions were made. But there was something different about this session compared to the old council meetings. People listened to each other. They asked questions respectfully. They acknowledged expertise. When someone from a smaller species made a suggestion, it was considered seriously. When a technician gave a warning about maintenance needs, it was heeded immediately. When anyone contributed, they were thanked. Small changes, but important ones. After the session, Sarah walked through the station with Krelix. The small analyst showed her the improvements that had been made. We have hired permanent maintenance staff, Krelix explained. They are well paid with full benefits. We have established rotating shifts so no one is overworked. We have created recognition programs so their work is acknowledged publicly. They passed a memorial wall that had been installed near the Environmental Control Center. It listed names. Hundreds of names. Human technicians, engineers, doctors, and mediators who had worked on the station over 3 centuries. We did not know most of their names, Krelix said quietly. We had to search through old records to find them. Some we never found, but we wanted to remember them, to make sure no one forgets what they did. Sarah touched the wall gently. She recognized some of the names. Colleagues, friends, people who had lived their entire lives making things work for others. Thank you, she said softly. This means more than you know. They continued walking. In the commercial district, Sarah saw something that made her smile. A small shop had opened, run by a human family who had returned from the compact. The shop sold tools and technical equipment. Next door was a Viridian cafe. On the other side was a Quilix bookstore. Just normal businesses. Normal life. People from different species working side by side. Not because they were forced to, but because they chose to. It is strange, Krelix mused. When I first studied human culture, I found a phrase that confused me. You call this ordinary. Making things work. Helping others, doing necessary work without seeking glory. You consider it ordinary? Yes, Sarah agreed. We do. Most species consider that extraordinary, Krelix said. We have grand words for such things, noble, heroic, sacred duty. But you call it ordinary, Sarah shrugged. Because it should be ordinary. Everyone should maintain what they use. Everyone should help their neighbors. Everyone should do work that matters. It should not be special. It should just be what people do. Krelix was quiet for a moment. Perhaps that is the real lesson. Not that humans are special, but that everyone should try to be as ordinary as you are. Sarah laughed. It was the first time Krelix had heard her laugh. It was a good sound. That evening there was a ceremony. The Federation was officially recognizing the human contribution to galactic civilization. A memorial had been erected in the central plaza of Zenith Prime Station. It was a simple design, a circle of stone with names engraved on it. Names of humans who had maintained systems, mediated conflicts, and held civilization together. Thousands gathered for the unveiling. Representatives from every Federation species attended. Even some species from outside the Federation came to pay their respects. Former Chairman Thaxol gave the dedication speech. He stood before the memorial, his forearms folded respectfully. 3 years ago, I made a terrible mistake. I believed that because work was done quietly, it was not important. I believed that because people did not demand recognition, they did not deserve it. I believed that because systems worked smoothly, they required no effort to maintain. He paused, his voice thick with emotion. I was wrong, and my arrogance cost us dearly. It cost lives. It cost prosperity. It cost friendships and trust that took centuries to build. He gestured to the memorial. These names represent 300 years of service. 300 years of people who asked for nothing but respect and received nothing but dismissal. We cannot undo that injustice, but we can learn from it. He turned to face the crowd. Let this memorial stand as a reminder, not just of what we lost, but of what we must never lose again. The understanding that all work has value. All contributions matter. All people deserve respect. The crowd was silent. Some were crying. Others stood with heads bowed. Sarah Chen stepped forward and placed her hand on the memorial. She felt the engraved names under her fingers. So many names, so many lives spent in quiet service. They asked for nothing but respect, she said, her voice carrying across the plaza. We did not leave because we hated you. The civil wars began in month 7. The first was on a Quilix colony world where two political factions had been arguing for decades about resource distribution. For decades, a human mediator had helped them negotiate compromises. The mediator had been quiet, patient, and skilled at finding solutions both sides could accept. Without the mediator, the arguments became fights. The fights became riots. The riots became war. By the time the council sent peacekeepers, 3 cities had been destroyed and 40,000 people were dead. The second civil war erupted on a Viridian industrial world. The third was on a mixed-species station near the frontier. The pattern was always the same. Old tensions that had been managed by human mediators suddenly exploded into violence. How many mediators did the humans provide? Thaxul asked Krelix during an emergency briefing. Krelix checked the records. 237 active mediators across council space. They handled approximately 15,000 disputes per year. Most of those disputes were resolved before they required official council attention. 15,000? Representative Vixtor repeated. That is impossible. We would have noticed. We noticed only the disputes that reached our level, Krelix explained. The humans resolved the rest quietly. They prevented 98% of conflicts from escalating. Dr. Zenthar looked ill. And now all those conflicts are escalating simultaneously. Month 8 brought economic catastrophe. The galactic economy had been contracting since the humans left, but it had been manageable. Uncomfortable but survivable. In month 8 it collapsed. The problem was logistics. Everything in a galactic economy depends on moving goods efficiently. Raw materials must reach factories. Finished products must reach markets. Food must reach consumers. When the human-optimized logistics systems failed completely, the entire economic structure fell apart. Factories closed because they could not get materials. Markets emptied because products could not be delivered. Unemployment reached 30% in some sectors. The council's central bank tried to stabilize the currency, but confidence was gone. The credit began losing value against currencies used by non-council species, including the currency used by the human compact, which remained stable and strong. They planned this, Thaxul said bitterly, watching economic reports flash across his screen. They deliberately undermined our economy. But Krelix shook his head. No, Chairman. They simply stopped maintaining it. There is a difference. Everything they built for us. When they left, they took only themselves. All their work remains. We simply do not know how to continue it. Thaxul wanted to argue but could not find the words. The truth was undeniable now. In month 9, plague came to Zenith Prime Station. It started as a minor illness among the Quilix population. Fever, fatigue, nothing serious. But it spread quickly through the Quilix quarters and then jumped to other species. Within 2 weeks, 12 species were infected. The medical center was overwhelmed. Dr. Zenthar worked 18-hour days trying to contain the outbreak. The disease was not particularly dangerous to any one species, but it was highly adaptable. Each time it jumped to a new species, it mutated slightly. Tracking those mutations and developing treatments was nearly impossible. We need epidemiologists, Dr. Zenthar told the council, specialists who understand disease vectors across multiple species. We have epidemiologists, Thaxul said. We have epidemiologists who specialize in single species or small groups of species, Dr. Zenthar corrected. We need experts in cross-species disease transmission. Those experts were almost all human. The plague lasted 6 weeks. 47 people died. Thousands more were severely ill. The quarantine procedures disrupted station life completely. Krelix investigated and discovered that this exact scenario had been prevented 17 times in the past 50 years. Human medical monitors had been watching for disease patterns, tracking potential outbreaks and coordinating preventive measures across the station's diverse population. They had worked quietly in the background, analyzing data, watching for warning signs. No one had noticed them until they were gone. By month 10, 12 species had formally withdrawn from the Galactic Council to join the human compact. Representatives gave various reasons, but the pattern was clear. The compact was functional. The council was failing. Thaxul called a closed meeting of the remaining council leadership. 23 species were represented, less than half the original council. We have no choice, Thaxul said. His voice was heavy with defeat. We must compel humanity to return. We will send a military fleet to human space. We will demand negotiations. You mean threaten them, Representative Vixtor said quietly. I mean show them we are serious. They are council citizens. They have responsibilities. Krelix stood up from the analyst station. Chairman, I must protest. This is noted, Thaxul interrupted. The decision is made. We will send our fleet. The Galactic Council assembled 32 warships representing the combined military might of the remaining member species. It was an impressive force capable of conquering entire star systems. The fleet represented power, authority, and the will to enforce council decisions. Fleet Admiral Korth, a massive reptilian commander from the Sorix people, led the expedition. He was a veteran of 3 wars and had never lost a battle. He departed Zenith Prime Station with confidence, his fleet jumping to faster-than-light travel in perfect formation. They reached the human border 3 days later. They were met not by weapons or defensive fleets, but by a simple communication broadcast on all frequencies. The broadcast was a video message from Ambassador Sarah Chen, whom none of them had seen in 10 months. She looked the same. Professional, calm, her hair pulled back neatly. She sat at a desk with the flag of the human compact behind her. Hello, Admiral Korth, she said, and hello to the Galactic Council leadership who sent you. We have been monitoring your approach. We know why you are here. Before you make any demands, I want to show you something. The video shifted to display a holographic map of local space. The human compact's territory was highlighted in blue. It was significantly larger than it had been 10 months ago, encompassing dozens of star systems and strategic locations. This is what we have built while you were learning to manage without us, Sarah's voice continued. We have created a coalition of 32 independent species. We have established trade networks, defense agreements, and mutual support systems. We have built a society based on the principles we tried to bring to your council for 50 years. Equal representation, valued labor, fair treatment. The map zoomed in on various systems showing thriving colonies, busy trade routes, and defensive networks. We did not leave to punish you, Sarah said, her image returning. We left to protect ourselves. We left because we deserved better than to be taken for granted. We left because we respected our own worth even when you did not. The video paused for a moment, and Sarah leaned forward slightly. Admiral Korth, you are a warrior with an impressive record. I respect that. But I want you to think carefully about your next action. You can demand that we return. You can threaten us. You can try to force us, or you can listen to what I am about to offer. Admiral Korth glanced at his tactical officer, who shrugged uncertainly. They had expected many responses: aggression, fear, negotiation. They had not expected a lecture. Sarah continued. Your fleet represents power, but your council is collapsing. You have lost half your member species. Your economy is failing. Your critical systems are breaking down. You cannot maintain what you have, let alone conquer new territory. If you attack us, you will lose. Not because our military is stronger, though it is, but because your people will not support a war when they are starving and struggling at home. She paused to let that sink in. Moreover, look at your fleet, Admiral. Really look at it. Check your crew manifests. Check your supply lines. Check your logistics. Admiral Korth frowned and gestured to his staff. They pulled up the fleet data. What they saw made several officers gasp. 40% of the fleet's personnel had submitted requests for transfer. Not to other council military units, but to civilian positions in human compact space. Engineers, medical staff, logistics officers, even some combat pilots. The requests had been filed quietly over the past week, waiting for approval. Your own people want to leave, Sarah said gently. Not because we recruited them. Because they see what we have built and want to be part of something that works, something that values their contributions. On one of the council warships, a Viridian engineer turned to his commander. Sir, is it true? Can we request transfer? The commander had no answer. Sarah stood up from her desk, her expression softening. I am going to make you an offer, Admiral. Not because I want to humiliate the council, but because I believe in solving problems. You can turn around and go home. Or you can stay here for 3 days. During that time, any crew member who wishes to request asylum in the human compact may do so. We will not encourage them. We will not recruit them. We will simply allow them to choose. She walked toward the camera, her voice becoming more earnest. And then, I want you to take a message back to Chairman Thaxul. Tell him we will help the council rebuild. Not as members, not as subjects, but as equals. Tell him we will send engineers, mediators, and teachers. Month 2 began with the banking crisis. The Galactic Council's quantum banking network connected thousands of financial institutions across hundreds of worlds. Trillions of credits moved through the system every day. The network had been designed by human cryptographers 200 years ago and had been maintained by human technicians ever since. On the morning of day 33, the network crashed. Not slowly. Not with warning. One moment it was processing transactions normally. The next moment, every banking terminal in Council space displayed the same error message. Quantum encryption key mismatch. System locked for security. Financial districts across the galaxy froze. Merchants could not process payments. Banks could not transfer funds. Governments could not pay their employees. In the Viridian core worlds, panic buying began within hours as people rushed to spend whatever physical currency they had. The Council's emergency technical team worked frantically to fix the problem. They brought in the best cryptographers from a dozen different species. After 3 days, they discovered the issue. The quantum banking system used encryption keys that rotated every 30 days for security. The rotation was automatic, handled by a master server that had been installed by humans centuries ago. The server needed maintenance every 6 months. That maintenance had been scheduled for week 5. The server had crashed during the key rotation because it had not received its maintenance. Now the entire banking network was locked, and no one knew how to unlock it without the proper access codes. The access codes had been held by 5 human cryptographers who worked for the Council's Financial Security Division. Those cryptographers were gone. The codes were stored in a secure system that could only be accessed by authorized human personnel. It took 2 weeks, and the combined efforts of 93 experts from 17 species to break into their own banking system. By the time they succeeded, 12 sectors had experienced economic collapse. Riots had broken out on 6 worlds. 3 governments had fallen. The cost in lost transactions and economic damage was estimated at 400 billion credits. Krelix presented the final report to the Council. The small analyst's voice was quiet but steady. The human maintenance schedule would have prevented this. The cost of that maintenance was approximately 50,000 credits annually. We saved 50,000 credits per year for 200 years. We have now lost 400 billion credits in 2 weeks. No one said anything. The mathematics was too terrible to argue with, but the banking crisis was only the beginning. In month 3, the translator network began failing catastrophically. The minor glitches from the first month had been patched, but no one had understood the full complexity of the system. The translator used advanced artificial intelligence that learned and adapted constantly. It needed regular training updates to handle new words, new concepts, and new species joining the Council. The AI had been trained by human linguists who understood not just languages, but how different species thought and communicated. They had spent decades teaching the AI about cultural context, about jokes and metaphors, about the 1,000 subtle ways that meaning could be conveyed or lost. Without those updates, the AI began making dangerous mistakes. A trade negotiation between the Viridians and the Quilix collapsed when the translator rendered a polite greeting as a serious insult. A medical instruction was mistranslated, nearly killing a patient. A military communication was garbled, almost starting a war between 2 allied species. The Council shut down the translator network entirely and went back to using basic translation software. Communication became slow, awkward, and prone to misunderstandings. Council sessions that once took 2 hours now took 6 hours. Trade deals that once took days now took weeks. How did the humans keep this AI working correctly? A Quilix programmer asked Krelix one day. Krelix had found the answer in old records. They employed 300 linguists across Council space. Those linguists would report problems, unusual phrases, cultural changes. The reports went to a central team who would update the AI's training every week. 300 linguists? Just for translation? No, Krelix said quietly. They were teachers, diplomats, traders, doctors. They were doing dozens of other jobs. The translation work was something they did on the side a few hours per week. They did it because they believed communication was important. The programmer left, looking disturbed. Month 4 brought famine. The agricultural worlds that fed the Council's core populations began reporting crop failures. The failures were bizarre and varied. On one world, the soil bacteria that helped crops grow suddenly died off. On another world, irrigation systems started malfunctioning. On a third world, the crops grew but were inedible to half the species that relied on them. Krelix investigated and discovered another human program that had been invisible until it was gone. 300 years ago, when species first began colonizing worlds together, they faced a problem. Different species needed different foods, which required different crops, which needed different soil conditions. Most agricultural worlds could only support one or two species crops naturally. Humans had solved this by developing specialized soil bacteria and microorganisms. These microorganisms allowed multiple species crops to grow on the same world by managing soil chemistry at a microscopic level. The program had been maintained by human agricultural scientists who distributed new bacterial cultures every year and monitored soil conditions across hundreds of worlds. The scientists had left. The bacterial cultures had begun dying off naturally. No one had known to replace them because no one had known they existed in the first place. 11 agricultural worlds faced complete crop failure. Food prices tripled across council space. Rationing began on the core worlds. The council had to negotiate emergency food imports from outside their territory, paying premium prices to non-council species who were happy to take advantage of the crisis. One of those non-council species was the human compact. "This is humiliation," Daxul said angrily as he signed the food import agreement with human traders. "They are exploiting our suffering." But the human trader, a calm woman named Maria Santos, simply shook her head. "We are charging fair market prices, Chairman. The same prices we charge everyone. You are welcome to seek other suppliers if you find better rates." Daxul knew there were no better rates. The human compact had the most efficient agricultural systems, the best preservation technology, and the fastest transport ships. They had built all of that in just 4 months. "How?" he asked despite himself. "How have you accomplished so much so quickly?" Maria looked at him with something like pity. "We were always doing this work, Chairman. You just never noticed because we were doing it for you instead of for ourselves." Month 5 brought pirates. Raiding attacks increased by 300% across council space. Trade convoys were hit regularly. Small colonies called for help that did not come fast enough. Merchant ships began hiring expensive private security or simply stopped traveling dangerous routes entirely. The council's military was strong, but it had always focused on large-scale threats. Border defense, fleet battles, the day-to-day security of trade. Routes had never been their concern because those routes had always been safe. Krelix discovered why they had been safe. Human patrol ships had been quietly securing hundreds of minor trade routes for decades. These were not military vessels but armed merchant ships, fast couriers, and volunteer security teams. They had not been part of any official program. They had simply been humans who saw a problem and decided to fix it. When they left, they took their ships with them. The pirates noticed immediately. The council military tried to fill the gaps, but they were designed for different work. Military vessels were too slow, too expensive, and too heavy-handed for patrol duty. Within weeks, the military budget was strained trying to cover routes that had been secured by volunteers. Representative Vixtor stood before the council, his crystalline form flickering with agitation. "We must address this situation directly. We must contact humanity and negotiate their return." "No," Daxul said firmly, though his voice lacked its usual confidence. "We will not beg. We will adapt. We will learn. We will collapse," Dr. Zenthar interrupted quietly. The Kulian doctor rarely spoke in council sessions, but now he stood with data tablets in both hands. "I have been documenting the crisis. By my calculations, we have 6 months before critical systems fail completely, maybe less." He displayed charts and projections. Medical care degradation, food supply shortlines, communication breakdowns, economic contraction. Each chart showed a downward spiral that accelerated over time. "The humans were not just workers," Dr. Zenthar continued. "They were the connective tissue of our civilization. They did not just maintain systems. They maintained relationships. They did not just fix problems. They prevented problems from occurring. We did not see it because prevention is invisible." The council chamber fell silent. Krelix stood at the analyst station reviewing the latest reports. 15 more species had left the council to join the human compact. Not because humans had recruited them, simply because the compact was stable, efficient, and growing, while the Council was chaotic, expensive, and shrinking. Week 1 passed in a blur of small problems. The translator network started producing strange errors. A Viridian merchant tried to negotiate a trade deal with a Corvian supplier and accidentally insulted the supplier's entire family line. The Corvian government demanded an apology. The Viridian insisted the translator had worked perfectly. It took 3 days to discover that a minor software update had not been installed. The update had been scheduled by a human technician who was no longer there to complete it. The Council hired a team of Quilix programmers to fix the translator. They studied the code for 2 weeks and managed to install the update. The translator worked again, but no one thought to check the schedule of future updates. There were 47 more patches waiting to be installed. Over the next 6 months, Krelix watched it all from the analyst desk and felt increasingly anxious. Chairman Thaxul called an emergency council session at the end of week 2. The council chamber filled with frustrated representatives. "This is unacceptable," announced Representative Vixtor, a crystalline being from the Silicon worlds. "My government's communication with the Central Trade Database has been delayed by 48 hours. We are losing money with every passing day. The medical exchange program has experienced critical failures," added Dr. Zenthar, a Kulian physician whose species resembled large amphibians. "We cannot transfer patient data between worlds. Treatments are being delayed." Thaxul held up his hands for silence. "These are temporary difficulties. We are hiring new technicians and engineers. The systems will be restored to full function shortly." "With respect, Chairman," Krelix said quietly from the analyst station, "I have reviewed the documentation left by human personnel. Many of these systems require specialized training that takes years to complete." "Then we will accelerate the training," Thaxul snapped. "The humans were not magical beings. If they could maintain these systems, so can we." But week 3 brought new problems. The environmental systems on Zenith Prime Station began fluctuating wildly. The Viridian quarters became too humid. The Quilix sections grew too warm. The aquatic species found their water tanks becoming slightly acidic. Engineers rushed from crisis to crisis, manually adjusting valves and recalibrating sensors. A team of Viridian engineers examined the central environmental control system. They found detailed notes left by the previous human chief engineer. The notes explained how the system balanced 47 different atmospheric requirements simultaneously, using a complex algorithm that adjusted in real time based on population density, activity levels, and even the time of day. The Viridian engineers stared at the algorithm for hours. They understood perhaps 30% of it. The rest required knowledge of atmospheric chemistry, pressure dynamics, and biological requirements for species they had never studied. How did one human manage all of this? One engineer asked. "She did not work alone," another replied, checking the old staff logs. "There were always 3 to 5 human technicians on environmental duty. They just worked in different shifts. We never noticed them because everything always worked perfectly. They hired 15 engineers from 5 different species to replace those 5 humans. It took the new team 3 days to achieve what the humans had done automatically every hour." By week 4, the first disaster struck. On mining colony Kepler 442b, deep in council space, an explosion ripped through the main extraction facility. The blast killed 200 workers from a dozen different species. Rescue teams searched through the wreckage while investigators tried to determine what had happened. The answer came quickly and was damning. A safety protocol had failed. The protocol was designed to prevent pressure buildups in the extraction chambers. It required weekly updates to account for changing geological conditions. A human engineer had been updating those protocols every week for 12 years. When she left, she had transferred the responsibility to the colony's main engineer, a Quilix named Vextar. Vextar had not known the updates needed to be done weekly. The documentation said regular updates required, but did not specify the frequency. Vextar had assumed monthly would be sufficient. It was not. The investigation report was sent to the Galactic Council. Krelix read it 3 times, feeling sick. The human engineer had been listed as a volunteer safety consultant. She had not been paid extra for maintaining the protocols. She had simply done it because it needed to be done. No one had even known her name until after the explosion. Thaxul read the report in his office, alone. He read the casualty list. He read the technical details. He read the section explaining how this had been prevented for 12 years by one human who worked quietly and efficiently and expected nothing in return. He felt something he had not felt in decades: doubt. That same week, the trade routes began experiencing delays. Ships that should have arrived in 3 days took 5 days. Ships that should have taken a week took 2 weeks. Cargo sat in warehouses waiting for transport that did not come. The council hired a Viridian logistics company to investigate. The company spent a week analyzing the problem and returned with a shocking report. The trade route schedules had been optimized by human-designed algorithms. These algorithms considered hundreds of variables: ship speeds, fuel efficiency, cargo weight, crew species requirements, rest periods, maintenance schedules, and even political tensions that might affect certain routes. The algorithms updated constantly, adjusting routes in real time. When the humans left, the algorithms continued working with their last instructions. But those instructions were now 4 weeks old. Ships had broken down. New tensions had emerged between species. Maintenance schedules had changed. The algorithms did not know any of this, so they continued sending ships on routes that were no longer optimal, or in some cases, no longer safe. The Viridian logistics company could create new routes manually, but it would take 6 months to match the efficiency of the old system. In the meantime, the galactic economy was slowing down. How did we not know the humans were doing all of this? Representative Vixtor demanded at the next council meeting. Krelix pulled up a report. The humans rarely asked for credit. They maintained many systems as part of broader agreements made centuries ago. They filed reports, but the reports were technical and detailed. Most council members never read them. I read reports, Thaxel said defensively. With respect, Chairman, when was the last time you read a maintenance report on the environmental systems? Or a logistics optimization update? Or a translator network patch schedule? Thaxel said nothing. He could not remember ever reading such reports. They had always seemed boring, technical, and unnecessary. Everything always worked, so why waste time on details? Now he understood. Everything always worked because humans made it work. By the end of the first month, the council had spent more money on emergency repairs and temporary solutions than they usually spent in a year. And the problems were getting worse, not better. Dr. Zenthar approached Krelix one evening in the station's observation lounge. The large Kulion looked exhausted. I need to tell someone, Dr. Zenthar said quietly. I discovered something troubling today. Krelix listened as the doctor explained. The medical center had equipment designed to work with multiple species. The equipment needed regular calibration for safety and accuracy. Dr. Zenthar had always assumed the medical equipment company provided the calibration service. Today, he had called the company to request an emergency calibration. The company informed him that they had never provided that service. They sold the equipment, but calibration for multi-species use was not included. Then who has been calibrating our equipment for the past 20 years? Dr. Zenthar had asked. The company did not know. Dr. Zenthar checked his old maintenance logs and found the answer. A team of 3 human medical technicians had been calibrating the equipment every month. They came during night shifts, worked for a few hours, and left. They had never asked for payment because it had been part of an old volunteer program that everyone had forgotten about. Everyone except the humans, who had kept doing the work anyway. How many patients have I treated because of those calibrations? Dr. Zenthar asked Krelix. How many lives were saved because humans were maintaining equipment that I did not even know needed maintenance? Krelix had no answer. That night a message arrived from the edge of council space. The message came from the Vrex Dominion, a powerful empire that had always been neutral, neither joining the council nor opposing it. The Vrex controlled key trading systems and strategic jump points. The message was brief. The Vrex Dominion announces a formal alliance with humanity. Effective immediately, our borders are closed to Galactic Council vessels. Trade agreements will be renegotiated on a case-by-case basis. We look forward to prosperous relations with the Human Compact. The council chamber erupted in panic when Thaxul read the message aloud. The Human Compact? What is that? Demanded Representative Vixtor. Krelix pulled up intelligence reports. It appears that humanity has been forming an alliance network. 15 independent species have joined in the past month. These are species that were never part of our council or who left decades ago. This is extortion, Thaxul said angrily. They are trying to force us to beg for their return. The council chamber of Zenith Prime Station buzzed with conversation. 47 different species filled the massive circular room, each representative sitting in their specially designed seats. Some needed water tanks, others required heated platforms. A few floated in gravity-neutral zones. The humans sat in simple chairs near the back as they had for 300 years. Ambassador Sarah Chen stood at the presentation podium, her dark hair pulled back in a neat bun. She held a data tablet and spoke calmly into the translator network. As I was saying, the infrastructure review suggests we need redundancy protocols. If we train multiple species on each critical system, we can prevent single points of failure. Chairman Thaxel, a towering Viridian with purple skin and 4 arms, waved one hand dismissively. His voice boomed through the chamber. Ambassador Chen, your species always worries too much. We have managed perfectly well. This is unnecessary complexity. Sarah's jaw tightened slightly, but her voice remained professional. With respect, Chairman, the data shows humans like to create problems where none exist. Thaxel interrupted. Several council members chirped and clicked their agreement. You have held your position for centuries based on your founding member status. Perhaps it is time for fresh perspectives. Sarah looked around the chamber. A few species met her eyes with sympathy. Most looked away or seemed bored. She had given this same warning in different forms for the past 50 years. No one listened anymore. Very well, she said quietly. I withdraw the proposal. Thaxel's face showed satisfaction. Excellent. Now to the matter of council reorganization. I propose we eliminate permanent seats. All species will rotate through council positions every 10 years. This promotes equality. The chamber erupted in discussion. Sarah stood silently at the podium, her face unreadable. A junior analyst named Krelix, a small insectoid creature from the Quilix hive worlds, watched from the observation deck. Krelix had always been curious about the humans. They were quiet, efficient, and seemed to be everywhere on the station. Yet no one really noticed them anymore. The vote proceeded quickly. 42 species voted in favor. 3 abstained. Only 2 voted against. The humans and the Corvians, an elderly species that rarely spoke. Thaxel stood, spreading all 4 arms wide. The measure passes. Ambassador Chen, humanity's permanent seat is dissolved effective immediately. You may remain as a rotating member, of course. Sarah gathered her data tablet and nodded once. Thank you for your time, Chairman. The human delegation will need to consult with our government. We will send word of our decision within the week. She walked out of the chamber, her footsteps echoing in the sudden silence. Her small team of human aides followed behind her, equally quiet. Thaxel watched them go and felt a moment of something. Doubt, regret? No, it was satisfaction. The humans had been too influential for too long. It was time for new blood, new ideas. Krelix, however, felt uneasy. Something about Ambassador Chen's calm acceptance bothered the small analyst. Humans were emotional creatures, or so Krelix had read. They should have argued more, fought harder. This quiet departure felt wrong. That night, Sarah Chen sent a single encrypted message to Earth. It contained 3 words: time to go. Across the galaxy, humans began to move. On Zenith Prime Station, Dr. Marcus Webb finished his shift at the medical center. He treated patients from 17 different species every day, cross-referencing symptoms and biochemistry that most doctors found too complicated to memorize. He sent his patient files to the central database, backed up his research notes to his personal drive, and deleted his access codes. He packed one small bag and headed to the docking bay. In the engineering levels, Chief Engineer Yuki Tanaka ran her final diagnostics on the station's environmental systems. The massive network kept 47 different atmospheric compositions balanced and separated. It was a nightmare of pressure valves, filtration systems, and monitoring sensors. She had maintained it for 15 years, often working double shifts when other species engineers couldn't figure out the integration problems. She backed up the maintenance logs, left detailed instructions on the most critical systems, and walked away. At the communications hub, dozens of human technicians completed their work. The translator network that allowed 47 species to understand each other had been designed by humans 3 centuries ago. Humans still maintained it, debugged it, and updated it every week. They uploaded their final patches, transferred admin access to the council mainframe, and departed. In the commercial districts, human shop owners closed their businesses. Human traders logged out of their accounts. Human teachers finished their last classes. Human doctors handed over their patients to confused colleagues who suddenly realized how many humans had been working in their hospitals. On mining stations, colony worlds, research outposts, and trade hubs across council space, humans quietly packed their belongings and left. It took 72 hours, Krelix noticed on the second day. The analyst was reviewing immigration data when a pattern emerged. Human departures had increased by 800%. Krelix rushed to the council offices and requested an emergency meeting. Thaxul read the report with mild annoyance. So they are leaving? This is their choice. We do not need to panic over a diplomatic tantrum. But Chairman, Krelix insisted, it is not just diplomats. It is all of them. Every human in council space is leaving. Then we will fill their positions with other qualified species, Thaxul said firmly. The humans are not special. They are adequate workers, nothing more. This changes nothing. Krelix returned to the observation desk feeling troubled but unable to articulate why. On the third day, the last human transport ship prepared to depart from Zenith Prime. Sarah Chen stood on the bridge, looking at the massive station through the view screen. She felt no anger, only a deep tiredness. They had tried. For 50 years they had tried to teach, to share, to prepare the other species for self-sufficiency. But you cannot help those who do not want to be helped. Ambassador, we are ready for departure, the captain said. Sarah nodded. Take us home. As the transport ship engaged its FTL drive, a curious thing happened across council space. Every system that humans had been maintaining, every network they had built, every interface they had designed displayed the same message simultaneously. The message was simple and appeared in all 47 council languages. Contract terminated, good luck. In the council chamber, alarms began to sound. Minor at first, a temperature fluctuation here, a communication delay there. Technicians rushed to their stations, confused by the sudden alerts. They pulled up diagnostic screens and found detailed maintenance logs left by human engineers, instructions for repairs, explanations of complex systems, schedules for regular updates. It was all there. The humans had left nothing damaged, nothing sabotaged. They had simply stopped doing the work. Thaxul stood in his office reading the message on his personal screen. For the first time in his long political career, he felt something cold settle in his stomach. Outside his window, the stars shone indifferently. In the distance, the last human ship disappeared into faster-than-light travel, leaving no trace behind. The Galactic Council was now truly on its own. And in the silence that followed, Krelix sat at a monitoring station, watching system after system switch from automated to requires manual oversight. The small analyst began to count how many systems were changing status. After an hour, Krelix stopped counting. The number was too high. In the commercial district, a restaurant owner pressed the emergency call button in his kitchen. The fire suppression system had malfunctioned. The response team arrived quickly but stared at the control panel in confusion. The labels were clear, the instructions were detailed, but the system was designed in a way that required understanding of human safety protocols. The technicians had never needed to learn it before. Humans had always handled these repairs. It took them 3 hours to stop a fire that should have been contained in 3 minutes. On a mining colony at the edge of council space, shift supervisors gathered for their morning briefing. They discovered that the human engineer who had been optimizing their extraction schedules was gone. The schedules themselves were simple to read, but no one knew how to update them when conditions changed. Production slowed by 30% on the first day. In a medical center on the core world of Viridius, Thaxul's own homeworld, a doctor prepared for a complex surgery. The patient was Aquilix, and the procedure required equipment calibrated for their unique biochemistry. The doctor activated the machine and frowned. An error message appeared. Calibration expired. Contact human medical technician for recalibration. The doctor had never needed to do calibrations before. There had always been a human technician who handled such things, usually during off hours. The doctor had never even met them. The surgery was postponed. As the third day ended and the fourth day began, the Galactic Council started to understand that something had changed. Not catastrophically, not obviously, But definitely, and perhaps irreversibly, the humans were gone, and no one was coming to fix things anymore. In the empty human quarters of Zenith Prime Station, Krelix stood alone, reading through files that the humans had left behind, maintenance logs,